Good afternoon, everybody. This is Richie coming at you from the historic Blick Plantation on March 20th, 2024, on this beautiful spring day. It's a little windy. You'll hear hunting dogs in the background at a neighboring kennel. Maybe hear a car drive by or two. But I just wanted to do this quick video. Well, it won't be too quick, but everybody asks about how, what the story is, and it's really difficult to put it into words. I built the website and I put a story on the website. I also gave a couple of interviews. I did an interview with TV6 in Richmond that's coming up. I did an interview with Progress Index, USA Today, that'll be coming up. And every time that I think about what all the different times and all the different years that the family tried to find this place, and we kept striking out, and then life would get in the way and we wouldn't bother with it for a few years, and then we would try it again. But kind of the story is, in around 1952, when my dad was about 5 years old, his father brought him here, and they were looking for the graveyard, and he says they could not find the graveyard, which was back there, behind the house, but it's not where you would expect it to be. But we had looked and looked and looked ever since. My dad had worked locally down the road for 27, 28 years, and during his lunch breaks and different things, when he had time to kill, he would drive around and he would try and find it. We also had old family map that had it marked on it, but it was so old this road wasn't even on there. It was because back then it was a driveway. The road ended up the street, so we didn't know what was even back here. This was the only house in this area until it was subdivided in the 1980s, and then people started building houses through here. So all the lots were kind of chopped up almost equally to 5 and 10 acre lots, and this is a 10-acre parcel that's remaining with a house on it. But it used to be about 1,000 acres. But how we found it is really interesting. It was completely meant to be. But this past summer, it was on Dad's bucket list that he wanted to find the cemetery that has his grandfather in it. They could not find the cemetery when my great-grandmother passed away. So she's buried at a different cemetery because nobody really knew where this one was. They knew about where it was, but they couldn't really find it. It's out in the county. It's very rural. There's a lot of woods around here, and you just never know. So I had pulled out all my old research over the years, and I had done a lot of research back in 2012 that identified this particular road as the location of the cemetery. So this past July, Dad and I set out on an all-day journey we were going to find this property. And I had the old maps, and I had my phone, which had the new map on it. And what I would do was to take and I overlaid the new map with the old map to come up with the approximate location in real time, in modern day. And we still couldn't see anything. It was so thick, you couldn't see the house behind me. You couldn't see anything. You couldn't tell that anyone had ever even set foot on this property, not to mention that there was a house back here and a cemetery. But what happened was we found a for sale sign. We found 3 on this road. And so I took pictures of each one of the signs, and I told Dad, I said, when we get back to the house, I'm going to do some research. I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for 25 years, and I know how to do a little bit of research. And so I did some digging that evening. I pulled up the listing, and then as soon as I saw that she had an aerial photograph on there, as soon as I saw the aerial photograph, I knew that this was the house. I just knew it. And I told them that. I got very excited and loud. I said, that's it. I know that's it. And I know that because I have an old family picture somewhere that I cannot find yet, but I'll find it one day. But it's got the house in the background. The picture was taken close to where I'm recording this from. And my grandparents were sitting on the porch with one of their daughters who I think had some health problems. And there was a male and a female slave that was on the porch with them as well, that are in the photograph. And I always thought that the house just looked like it was going to fall down in that photograph, but it was mainly the shutters. The shutters were were tilting downward from gravity and being wooden. So really, the shutters were awful back then. I believe that photograph was around 1900, but I'm not even 100% sure on that one. It could have been earlier than that. But so the porch was on the house at that time, and they are in the photograph. But what I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But what we ended up doing is the next morning, or that night, I emailed the realtor. I had to sign a waiver to come on the property because it was no trespassing, appointment only, and enter at your own risk. And so I had to sign a waiver. And since I'm a realtor, she let me come here by myself. And so I came here. I didn't tell anybody. I came here and I looked at the house, and I went up inside the house, and I was in shock because you had to hop up about 4 foot to get in the side door. Um, there was no steps on the side of the house then, and there was no door. It was wide open to the animals and elements. And so I saw the house, and I just knew right then that this is it. This is the ancestral home place. I could feel it. I could feel a pull. And so I hopped up in the house, and I took a few pictures, and I was amazed at the condition, considering the outside looks really bad. The inside is decrepit, but it looks pretty awesome compared to the outside. I When I went in the front, what I now call the west room, which is the one with the pretty fireplace mantle. Um, as soon as I took the picture, I heard footsteps upstairs, and I heard a whoosh. And I got my butt out of there. I scurried, got out of there, uh, jumped out of the side of the house pretty quickly, and I turned the corner and looked up at the front windows of the house, and there was a vulture that had hopped up on the front windowsill. So there was vultures. There was 2 of them in the house. So I got spooked. So I said, I'm going to head straight to the courthouse and do the research. So that's what I did. I went straight to the courthouse. I'm stubborn, so I like to do things on my own, which is one reason why I'm in a sling right now. But I talked to the clerk of court, and the clerk of court agreed to. She helped guide me a little bit, but I did a lot of the digging, and when I couldn't find something, I would go back to the clerk of court, and then I would go back again. There's a car going by, so sorry about the noise. Then I ran into a roadblock. I got back to the early 1900s, and then ran into a roadblock. And so I went back to the clerk, and she encouraged me to look in the wills. So I started looking in the wills, and that's really when I started uncovering it. I found that my great 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 grandfather, George Richard Blick, who's buried out back, had left in his will that this was post Civil War, that he wanted the plantation auctioned off, and all of the contents auctioned off, except for what he left to several of his children. Not all of his children, like my great great grandfather wasn't listed in there in the will as receiving anything from him, I don't believe, but he did mention split equally amongst children or something. But he wanted my great 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 grandmother, Cornelia Lucy Blick, to be reimbursed for the gold that she had spent fixing the place up when they got married and moved in here, because he inherited it from his father. So I just thought that was amazing, and that's probably when the porch was added. And maybe one of those interior wall could have been added then as well. But so I had confirmation on that day that it was indeed the property, that it really was our ancestral home place. So we knew that we had found it. So I got with Dad, came back, um, walked around the opposites, the right hand side of the property, the eastern side of the property, back behind the carriage barn, and walked all down. It's 10 acres, and even though I guess to city people that's a lot of land, but to county people that's not a lot of land. But I walked the entire thing and came back up front and could not find it. So I don't live here full time, so I had to go back home and work. And I came back the following weekend, and Dad and I came out again, and I still couldn't find it. And that was my third trip or third visit here. And so finally I said, you know what? We know it's back there. We had talked to a neighbor out on the street, and he told us where he thought that it was, that he knew that it was back here as well. They call it the Civil War Cemetery. And but what I couldn't find it in his location either. So I decided to bring my kids. I said I need youthful eyes looking through these woods because everything kind of blends in together. And all we knew was there were just a couple of headstones sticking up. So when you mix that in with overgrowth and evergreens and all the periwinkle back there, you couldn't find it. So I planned a day trip where I brought my kids down here. They got to see the house. We had already placed a contract on the house to save it. There were people looking at the house to tear it down, to scavenge the timbers off of it, and build something else with it. And we didn't want that to happen, so we went ahead and put a contract on it, and with an extended closing date being my dad's birthday. So the seller was really kind in working with us on that. The agent did not know if there was a cemetery back there or not. I found many years ago, I had found a website called Find a Grave, and I found the family cemetery listed on there, but it did not give GPS coordinates. But I noticed that the person who posted those pictures was the brother of a high school classmate of mine. He was my sister's age. She's older. So I reached out to him in an email, and he was on sabbatical. He's a minister. And so I didn't know when I would hear back from him, but fortunately, pretty quickly, he got back with me, and he was kind enough. He took an aerial photograph from Google Maps, and he circled where he thought that it was. Now, it had been 10 or 12 years since he had set foot on this property, but he still knew about where it was, which was nowhere near, again, where we thought it was going to be. So when the kids and I came back that day, we had that map in hand, and we set out to find that cemetery, and we fanned out. All of us did, looking for it. And my one of the kids yelled, I think it was Spencer or Lily, or I don't know. One of the kids yelled, "Hey, there's a headstone. There's a big stone right there." And I couldn't see it, and I was right up on it, and I still couldn't see it. I was at the back, a different angle. And when we located it, it turned out that I had walked right past here right past the cemetery on one of my other visits when I was scouting the property. I had walked, there's a shed that belongs to a neighbor that was right beside the cemetery, which we thought at that time was on the property line. And the shed was on their side of the line. But I went to that shed when I was here looking for the cemetery by myself. And the headstone is 10 foot from that shed, and I never saw it. So I'm really grateful that that the kids and their youthful eyes were able to find it. And we then came back and devised a plan to get my dad back there because he was mobility challenged. He has good days and bad days, and he was mobility challenged and could not walk back there. It's about 125 paces back. And again, it's not a straight shot, and you got to cut through the woods. So I got permission from the the seller for me to clear a path for him to get back there on his riding lawnmower. So we had to take the deck off of it anyway to have it repaired. So I took the deck off, brought the lawnmower up here, and here comes a truck by. Uh, Brought the lawnmower up here, and then we were able to get it fired up, and Dad was able to drive it about 3/4 of the way, and the belt jumped off of it. So, but he could see the cemetery because we had outlined what we thought was the boundary in caution tape, so you could see it pretty clearly at that point. And he decided he was going to walk the rest of the way, so he did. And he was finally able to lay his eyes on his grandfather's grave for the first time in his life, and he was 75 years old. So that was really special. And to finally, for me to be able to lay my eyes on their graves and to know their resting spot. And then, but what was interesting is we were standing there with the kids before that, and they realized that it was much bigger than just the 4 or 5 plots, or, graves of the family members. And I came back, and the next door neighbor reached out to me one day. I dropped a letter in her mailbox, and she reached out to me one day, and she explained that she didn't know exactly where the boundary line was, but her father had taken care of that cemetery when he was alive as best that he could. And we believe now that there's a portion of that cemetery that's on her property, and there's probably enough to be on this lot as well. But Virginia has an access law for eternal access for family cemeteries. You just have to give appropriate notice to the landowner. But anyway, so we were able to close on the property November 7th. And then that weekend, we started cleaning it out. So it evolved kind of quickly. I had applied and started for the nonprofit because when you see this house, you realize that it's pretty special. It's historically significant because of the era that it was built in, and the fact that it's as decrepit as it is, you're able to see what's in the walls. It gives you a unique perspective. And then as we brought professionals in and they agreed, I haven't had to pay people for this stuff yet. So this is all from Preservation Virginia's nonprofit. So Logan and Eric came out, DHR, Department of Historic Resources, the state. So they didn't charge anything to come out. So getting their expert opinions and help and guidance has been critical. And I just dove in deep on the internet and contacted people, and they put me in touch with the right people. So it's just a matter of things lining up the way they're supposed to. But I'm excited because tomorrow there's a meeting in Richmond for DHR about putting the house on the state registry. So I'm very excited about that. And so I'll have another post about that coming up. But I wanted to do this before I fell through the front porch and tore my shoulder and bummed up my knee. But that was what I was planning on doing, was doing this video so that I could answer your questions on how we found this place. And I appreciate all the interest. I appreciate all the support. And I appreciate the people reaching out to volunteer their passion. It's amazing that our little story for our family has grown the way that it has, but I'm eternally appreciative of it. And now, since we have the nonprofit, it is tax deductible. If anybody wants to make a donation, click on the donate button. It's there. We do need some help for specific tasks that are going to be coming up. And I've met some really cool people thanks to our Facebook page and the website now, and through DHR, and this whole experience has been wonderful. And it's teaching me an area of history and real estate and preservation that I didn't know before. So I hope to take this in my career and do something special with that as well. But we appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate you tagging along. That's my little phrase, I guess, that's taken off. But thanks for tagging along, and we'll see you soon. God bless. Let me see.